Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of Sherp Shop's Gaming Podcast, the podcast where we give our opinions and we don't care what you think about it. This week with me is Chris,
Hello.
Dave,
Hey, how's it going?
and Phil.
Hey guys.
So, guys, before we get into the main week's topics, is there anything gaming news that you guys want to go over or anything?
This saga of GameStop stock has just been purely entertaining. That's all I have to say about it.
So, my wife just texted me a meme about it. The thing gamers understand that hedge fund managers didn't is that GameStop never trades at a reasonable price.
Accurate.
I really thought about buying a GameStop stock this week, just to stick it to the man, But
yeah. But
as a person who suffered greatly in the 2008 economy crash, I agree with everything that has been happening.
Yeah. Except for what Robinhood has done and other trading things like that.
Yeah, not a good look for them.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah, that's gonna have some backfiring on them.
You cheated! You altered the outcome by playing by the rules!
Hey, the rules are only supposed to be for us.
For rich people. Yeah, sure.
Unless you look like Uncle Moneybags from the Monopoly game.
Yep. Right.
Billionaires just pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
Yep.
Stop focusing so much on avocado toast and, maybe brew your own coffee instead of going to Starbucks.
I like avocado toast.
I know, but it is so fun to rag on those millennial pull up by your bootstrap memes right now, though. All right. Anyway, That is not what this podcast is about. But really, was there any other news this week, gaming related?
The Medium came out.
What?
The Medium came out.
Oh, that does look good.
So actually, I got a chance to try it.
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah, my new PC is actually strong enough to play that game.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird. It's visually gorgeous until you look at a person, and then it looks like dog doo-doo.
Oh, it sounds like the Call of Cthulhu game on PS4 and Xbox One.
That's unfortunate.
Great atmospheric, great sound. Old school Resident Evil tank controls.
Oh.
Why did they do that?
Oh, those are so hard to get used to.
I haven't played a game like that in forever. That's not.
It is, and like I just got to the credits, like the opening credits. It won't let me run.
Ooh.
I can only walk to places right now.
So is this like a walking simulator then?
It's a horror puzzle game.
Okay.
The big draw of this game is she can see the world of the dead and the real world at the exact same time, and doing something in one will impact the other.
How does that work? I've seen some of like the footage of it where they put you in like split screen mode.
Yeah.
So when it's in split screen mode, when you move your character, it moves the exact same way in both worlds. It's just some one world will have something you can interact with, where the other one doesn't. One will let you go past a point, in which case the split screen stops, and you just take over one of those worlds entirely.
Okay.
And then when you get back, it goes back to split screen, and then you can go back to just one or the other.
So does the game initiate the split screen mode for you?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a button you have to press, but it tells you to press it.
Gotcha. Okay.
And it's got...
Sorry.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
No. I was about to change topics. I thought you were done. Keep going.
No. I was going to say, the only other thing it has is basically a scanner mode where you can sense that something is out of place or sense that something has been moved.
Oh, like magical Batman detective mode?
Yeah. Oh, okay. I can sense that the tie clip has moved, and I can see that it fell under the clock. Game mechanic powers.
The only other news that I found was just before we got on tonight, I was just looking through my Facebook stream, and Square Enix popped up with Nintendo Switch in that Balan Wonderland game.
Oh
And
yeah,
I'm just looking at it. I'm like, this is Nights into Dreams,
Yeah.
from the Sega
Yeah.
set. And then I was just like, is it? And then I like pull up my phone. Yes, Yuji Naka and Naoto Oshima, the creators of Sonic the Hedgehog, and the directors for Nights into Dreams. And I'm like, this is Nights into Dreams. And so I'm excited for it actually now. It looks like fun. I'm debating though on waiting whether to get it for next gen, or since it's such a stylized game, will that even matter? Because of cartoon graphics, it's not like they're going to get better necessarily on an art style on next gen. You might have some more lighting effects and particle physics.
That is not the thing that I think that will be most impacted by next gen. And I don't know about this game specifically, but a lot of games, even though they don't visually get any buffs, will get a frame rate buff. So you go from 30
that's
frames
true.
to 60
That is
frames.
true.
I feel like that's been the big thing of this generation.
Yeah, that is true.
Certainly so far, where you're seeing performance bumps, right? Where you can actually do. I'm excited to where you get to the point where like all the games are running like Spider-Man Miles Morales on PS5, to where you get ray tracing and 120 frames per second.
No, I just it reminded me so much of Knights, just that character animation, and I have both. It is both a good and terrifying memory of Nights into Dreams, actually, because one summer my parents got season passes to the St. Louis Six Flags. And that year also Sega was going to theme parks and demoing brand new games for the Saturn, actually. And so they had a tent set up to Nights into Dreams. And I remember it was like overcrowded with teenagers. And, I don't even know if I was 10 yet. And, one opens up finally and I rushed to it. But apparently I didn't know that another kid had rushed to it too. I got to it first. All I remember, though, is then this kid's dad comes up, grabs me by the collar, and pulls me away from the game. And he just says, something to the effort of those, "What do you think you're doing?" Whatever his son's name got here first, and then shoves me aside. And I was just like so stunned. And then luckily there were two teenagers that were just like looking at it. It was just like, that's crap. And so they just go, "Hey, buddy, come over here. We're done over here. You can have this one." And so then I got away and told my dad, and he was just like, "Wait, what? Where?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I was upset, and then free video game, and then I forgot."
Right.
Yeah, but so I'm looking forward to it. So because I do love that game, and I have a complete inbox edition for the Saturn, which is both something to be proud and sad of, I guess.
Right.
But but when I saw that, I just the art style just immediately was just like, oh, Nights into Dreams. So I'm looking forward to it actually. And it was nowhere on my radar until less than an hour ago.
Nice.
Yep.
Well, should we get into the main topic, gents?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
So this week's main topic, and I apologize now because I think I'm going to lose some friends.
I am
is
too.
The most controversial gaming opinions you have. Does anyone volunteer to lose friends first?
I'll go first because I don't know that mine's probably going to be the least controversial because I don't have that many conflicting opinions on it. But I will say there's something that's been kind of on the back of my mind after Cyberpunk came out is that I kind of feel like gamers are starting to ruin gaming. And the reason I say that is because a lot of us in general, like myself included, I'm guilty of this, but like people are so used to having day one patches or early access or games coming out early and then not having bugs or the bugs getting fixed quickly. And it's and on top of that, they have they're complaining about microtransactions, and the reason why that stuff keeps happening is because people keep buying the game. That's the companies are making money off of these early access games that are getting released without patches, They're
Mhm.
doing microtransactions because people are paying for it,
Sure.
and everybody wants to complain. And yeah, the developers and the producers or the publishers are being very greedy about it. But if they stopped making money on it from so many people buying their stuff, they wouldn't continue to do it.
True. The best thing we could do is vote with our wallet. And
Right.
if you don't like microtransactions, don't pay
Don't
for
buy
them.
them. Yeah.
And again, I know I'm guilty of it. Like I myself have bought, one or two like Modern Warfare skins and stuff, but at the same time, a lot of people are just so bent on a shape about a lot of these companies doing pay to win and microtransactions, or they're just trying to do like I think Escape from Tarkov. Like I was playing that for a minute. I haven't played it recently, but that game has been in early access for 3 years, and people are complaining about the bugs. And it's like, well, they're not going to release a full game because we're all buying it. We've all paid for it. They're going to continue to make money off the early access and tease you with new content. They're never going to fix the desyncing issues and mechanics issues. They're not going to get the core of the game fixed. They're just going to keep adding content because they got their money.
So I'd much rather them release a game in early access and not necessarily charge people for it and fix the game along the way.
Yeah.
Than release an unfinished game or a game that's clearly broken. So,
like open beta, they've done that, but you don't pay for it. You just sign up, you play the game, and you do bug reports on it if you're interested.
Mhm.
Sure.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, clearly it gets. I mean, like Fortnite was, I think, in early access for like 2 years, so the lines are blurry. It's a world of
Mhm.
gray.
I think it would be better if it did it more like a Patreon style, like, hey, we're going to put this game out here. If you like what you've played thus far and want to see it keep developing, you can donate money up to the cost of the game. If you donate
Mhm.
up to the cost of the game, when it goes full release, you get the full game. But that
Mhm.
way, you don't have to put all your money up front. If you just want to try it out, you can
Yeah.
vote with your wallet. Like the stock market is supposed to work.
Yeah. No,
Yeah, Patreon. Go ahead, Dave. Yeah.
No, sorry, I snickered at your comment first, Phil, because all I could think of was like, Scots, they ruined bloody Scotland. Oh, bleep that one. Sorry. But no, and I thought originally though maybe you were also going just at not just with microtransactions and stuff like that. I'm guilty of it too, but I'll only ever do it for cosmetic items because that doesn't affect gameplay. Like,
right.
I'll admit I'm a sucker for costumes in like fighting games. So like, Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat. I got to catch all the costumes, I guess.
Mhm.
I thought when you initially said it, I thought you were talking about how it seems like fan communities ruin the game that they kind of encircle around. It seems like,
Yeah.
and make it so like no new person wants to be a part of it. So like I remember I just made mention at work that I was starting up Undertale, and then I was suddenly inundated with oh, you got to do this, 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 and finally I just had to be like, stop it. I'm gonna play it how I want to play it, and then see what it's all about. So it's got to the point with some of this stuff that like I also feel like gaming communities just get so toxic that I just don't want to be. I want to be a fan of the game, but I don't want to be associated with that group.
Yeah.
All right.
And it depends on the community, right? Like I think
Mhm.
Monster Hunter has probably one of the best gaming communities I've ever been a part of.
Oh yeah.
Right? Everyone is
Mhm.
super cool and
Mhm.
willing to help you out for the most part.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But then I would say, like on the opposite end of the coin of that is, remember we all got earlier. Actually, not earlier. This was at the tail end of last year. We all started up Fantasy Star Online 2. Remember?
Mhm.
Yeah.
The first time I logged into that, I walked past another guy, and he made it a point to type out a message to me that just said basically, "Why are there so many noobs on this server? Get off!" And I'm just like, "Thanks." Yeah.
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 That's
Look
a good
at you.
example. That's a
I
good example. Yeah.
Online
Yeah.
gaming in general, I think, is riddled with that. Where
Mhm.
either they're they're a toxic community or the game has been out long enough and you've got people who can play the game for 12 to 15 hours a day and then just
Mm-hmm.
that's the game they play. They don't play anything else. They play that one online game and they're very competitive. And then we jump in our 30s, full-time jobs, playing 2 hours, at the end of the night and just get decimated.
Yeah.
Or if you play, even if you play a co-op game, they come through and they just burn through the match in like, a few minutes. So, I mean, granted, that'll be with anything, but it does bring up a good point about online gaming and just how it's really hard to get into because of other gamers. I guess.
Yeah,
Point.
I thought you were going to talk more about like gatekeeping, which, I think everyone is guilty of that at some point. But luckily, I kind of like with gaming. Even as like when I was in high school, I recognized just like I'm not being cool with this. I'm just being a jerk. But so now just I love to help people get into new games and new fandoms and stuff like that. So I'll be at like a convention and just start chatting up the person next to me. Like they'll be playing a game. Hey, what's that? That looks pretty interesting. Mostly, I found people at conventions though, are more willing to approach you, but don't. But by doing so, don't go to the gaming room where you'll just get your butt kicked again by a 13-year-old Asian kid whose mom is crocheting in the corner.
It sounds like you told that story before, Dave, on a previous podcast.
Yeah. I'm still
That's what we call a comeback.
About it. However, I am very happy to say though that later I met a like Sony like hype guy. He was at Anime St. Louis, and we were all playing Mortal Kombat 11, and I kicked his butt. Yeah, yeah. Sub-Zero still got it.
I like it.
And he's like, "Do you want a rematch?" No. I'm gonna ride this wave of this high, of endorphins for a while.
I'm going out on top.
Yeah. One and done. That's what I say. Also gives no time for the 13-year-old Asian kid and his mom to show up.
Just because Phil kind of mentioned a lot with his controversial opinion, I'm going to go ahead and launch mine here.
Okay.
And
okay.
He's been hyping this up, ladies.
Is this the friend burner?
So there are going to be caveats to this, but
okay.
I personally feel that microtransactions and DLC has been good for gaming.
Oh.
So
wow. Okay.
there's two main avenues that takes. Okay. So the first one I'm going to talk about is financially. Okay. How much does a video game cost right now? Like a AAA game for the PS4 era?
$60.
$60.
Yeah.
And they've just gone up for next generation, right? 70.
Right to 70. Yep. Okay. How much did they cost for the PS3 era?
They were still 60.
Yeah, they were still 60.
60.
50 to $60 has been kind of the standard for the past,
Yeah, like
15, 20 years.
Because like wasn't it starting to get like way out of control pricing wise in the SNES Genesis days, so they finally kind of unofficially agreed to a set price.
Pretty little bit there.
So that way, if like a crap game was $100, you didn't feel completely ripped off.
Right. Yep. So actually, I've got a great website here from TechRaptor, where they actually break down the average game cost for a console, for what the games cost at that time and what that would translate to in money in 2020. Okay.
Sure. Well, not to mention the fact that a lot of the games that we grew up playing with were made by like a team of 10, maybe 20 people. And now AAA games are made by teams of like 200, 300 people.
Yeah. So for the Super Nintendo, the cost at launch was $200. Okay. The cost today for a Super Nintendo would, if in current day money with inflation would be $395.81, much closer to what the current gen console prices are.
Mm-hmm.
The average game cost for the Super Nintendo was $59.99.
Mm-hmm.
Translated to 2020 money, that'd be $118.73.
Whew.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So even though our dollar doesn't get us as much as it used to, we haven't increased the paying for games, but they have gone up exponentially in price due to needing larger development studios, with needing more people working on it. And quite honestly, games are more complicated now. You have a lot more things you need to get into it. So
Mm-hmm.
microtransactions and DLC has allowed us to add extra revenue to these games that is optional. So the core game, we don't have that barrier of entry from a game costing $118. We keep it at $60, and then if you want to piecemeal it together, you can then add more and more to show your support for that game. It's like saying $60 is now my okay. I'm interested, and then you can buy the DLC and the microtransactions if you want the full experience. But if you're happy
Sure.
with just the base one, you're good. Now,
Yeah.
I am against things like loot box, paid microtransactions. I think that if you're going to buy something, you need to know what you're getting.
That's
And
largely gone away from thanks to the EU, actually.
right. There is
Still,
one other thing that sorry, go ahead, Dave.
it's just, I would still say, yeah, I find loot boxes, I'm getting pretty sick of. And I'll have some points to argue with you because coming as the collector of games, you know, sometimes, I guess I wish more often than not, though, that games would release more, like complete
Complete.
editions after, like after maybe 2 years after the game's been out, release like the complete edition. And the one thing I also wish they would do, they don't, they just include like a bunch of codes in the game pack so you get
Not
it.
having it on the actual disc.
Yeah, have it on the actual disc. I know that won't happen, but I do like then though that I can. But they do it a lot with like fighting games. So like, I was able to buy Injustice 2 Ultimate Edition for the school's hobby club. Slide the disc in, boom, there's everybody, everything. Don't have to worry about no codes, nothing. Bought it used, was fine. I wish it could be that simple, but for some of these games, I know it's not. Like Resident Evil 7, I bought the gold edition actually, and what it was nice though is like I was able to put it in the disc though, and it auto load. It started downloading all of it, so it like immediately recognizes, oh, this is gold edition. You need this, 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 this. But eventually, it's
Sure.
going to get to the point though that's not going to be the case. And I know that some people have the attitude, well, why are you going to care about a game that's 15 years old? Well, here's the thing: we are now starting to lose games because of that. That are just lost in time.
So
Yeah.
I'm not going to disagree with you at all, Dave. It's not necessarily better for collectors.
Mm-hmm.
My viewpoint is more how can we make gaming more accessible to people? How can we get more people into it and
Yeah.
not have these boundaries?
Yeah.
And that's where I think that microtransactions and DLC has been very beneficial.
And I would agree with you on that. Yeah.
It's been good for free to play. I don't mind microtransactions in free to play games. The developers have to make money somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Where it I think we all know that where it just could be a gray area is that I think there's a right way to do it and there's a wrong way to do it.
We're still going through growing pains as an industry. I 100% agree with that.
I mean, for example, like let's look. You were talking about like gold edition and whatnot, Dave.
Yeah.
Makes me think of like Control and how they flubbed the Ultimate Edition and really kind of screwed over all the people that supported that game when it first came out.
I was
really kind of sucks.
I'm unaware of what happened with that. How did that go exactly?
So basically, the big thing with it is if you own the Ultimate Edition, you get a free upgrade to the Xbox or the PS5 version, the series, whatever, right?
Oh, okay.
If you don't own the Ultimate Edition, it's a paid expansion. They're not participating in smart delivery. Is
gotcha.
basically what really sucks.
And don't quote me on this, but they may have reversed that actually, just because the backlash was so fierce.
Mm.
Okay.
Just
I don't know. I mean, it is now available on PlayStation Plus in February, so I'm gonna play
Right.
it that way. But there's clearly there's a right way to do it, and there's a wrong way to do it. My other thing that I was gonna say, as far as DLC goes, I've always appreciated DLC that has gone the more old school approach, where it's more like an expansion. And you actually get a big piece of content, as opposed to, okay, I paid $15 and I play it for 2 hours and I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really feel like I'm getting a whole lot of value out of that.
Like I would say the best example of that in recent memory was Monster Hunter World Iceborne, which wasn't it like $40?
It was pretty much a sequel game without it being a sequel.
Yeah, exactly. It was a sequel with it added a whole extra game to that. Really is what it did. So I was happy to pay that price. And even then, on top of that, they had little cosmetic items that you could buy. Affected nothing in the game, but if I wanted to, I could make the handler dress up as the tyrant from Resident Evil 2, which is funny.
So that actually brings me up another point of how I feel like DLC is saving people money. So remember Super Mario Galaxy? I'll use that as an example.
Yeah.
And then you had Super Mario Galaxy 2. Pretty much a lot of the assets from Super Mario Galaxy went to Super Mario Galaxy 2.
Right.
It was the equivalent of an Iceborne to the original Monster Hunter World. So, but instead of having to pay the full price for a full second game, you get a discounted price for having it be DLC. Again, lowering that barrier of entry. What was the other example I was just thinking of?
I was gonna ask you on the same line of thinking, Tyler. You're the resident Pokemon expert here. How did Pokemon handle doing DLC instead of doing a re-release?
So
like
great
they
question
usually
there.
would do.
So they actually handled it fairly well. So what they did was they added a new area that you could explore, essentially a new open area with a few quests and whatnot there to give you a lot of those features. But that all in all cost $30 versus having to pay $60 for another Pokemon game, where you have to then play through everything again, duplicating a lot of what you've already done. This just cuts straight to the extra stuff you want. Again, being consumer friendly.
Okay.
But
so it was a better experience going the DLC route in that case than basically playing a, I don't know, like a royal version of the game, or right? Whatever.
Right. Yeah, I would say so. But that actually brings me to a great my second great point is for competitive games, it helps keep the community alive online. So with each expansion for the Pokemon games, they added more Pokemon in, which refreshed the online community, had them change up their game styles, and had increased player base. The same thing applies to like Smash Brothers or Mortal Kombat. Instead of dropping all the characters at once, dropping them one at a time has a reason for people to come back and keeps that community engaged for longer than just the launch period. So you're actually able to enjoy your game more for a longer period of time. Because nothing worse than a fighting game that comes out, you get it a year later, and you want to play online with other people, and there's no one online to fight with.
Or the only ones that are online are the masters.
Right. By having it spread out, it allows you to have a longer kind of in the community's eyes of the game and keeping that player base up, making it more enjoyable for everyone.
I gotcha. I guess some of the things I would have with fighting games is just personal gripes, but I do miss unlocking those secret characters, and I wish they would do that and then addition to have DLC. Like I really like it when DLC is an afterthought and not so much, we planned it out this way the whole time. That's what I like. So, Smash Brothers tried to do that, but at the same time, with Ultimate, whenever they announced a new character, it's an event. All right? So they had to announce everybody, but then at the same time, you also have to unlock everybody. And I think if they had just kept their mouth shut a little bit, we might have been able to relive some of that nice memories that we had in the Melee days.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
And-
I think.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. No, go ahead, Phil.
I was just going back to my original, like, my controversial opinion. My original point on that was like with gaming, gamers getting more comfortable with easier gaming. Like, Dave, you reminded me of a story where I had heard from my brother where he had known somebody. Actually, let me back up a little bit. I don't know if he actually knew somebody or something he read about. Right. But anyway, there was a story that he had heard that a guy was trying to introduce, I think it was his nephew, to the Dark Souls series. And he was showing it to him and was like, oh, you go through this dungeon, you kill bad guys, you collect souls, and then if you can survive on your way out of the dungeon, you can use those souls to buy more gear or level up your character, and yada yada yada. And then the nephew apparently looked at the guy and said something like, "Oh, well, how do I buy these?" He's like, "Well, what do you mean? You don't buy them. You get more by beating the bad guys and by beating the bosses, and you can go and spend them." He's like, "Yeah, but I don't want to do that. I just want to buy them." You can't. That's not the point of the game. And when you mentioned that about unlocking the characters, like there was a point where unlocking the characters and unlocking the skins actually took like a little bit of effort, like where you have to grind or like level up your guy or unlock it with just a certain pattern of playing. Nowadays, a lot of them is just turning to, oh, you want this skin? We'll pay us $5. Like that kind of stuff. And again, like I guess coming full circle, bringing up the point of there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we can all appreciate it when it's done correctly, but at the same time, it's equally frustrating when it's obvious that it's just a money bags situation.
Sure.
Like
go ahead.
My last fighting game. But I think the last time that it was done well, but it still had like Mortal Kombat 9. The one that was just Mortal Kombat. Mm-hmm. You still had, and Mortal Kombat has done this, but they've kind of limited it to be like one character that's kind of a surprise.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, though, they have done some scummy practices. But I think it might be more Warner Brothers is doing than NetherRealm. But like, you had to unlock Cyber Sub-Zero, and it was just one of those things. You were like, "Oh, well, that's new." And then also, like, they did not announce the character Frost for Mortal Kombat 11 until later after the game had launched. However, while that was nice in Mortal Kombat 9 and Mortal Kombat 11, though, there is an option, however, in the DLC I don't know if it says unlock Frost or like
it says unlock Frost.
Okay, but you could pay $5 to just boom, there it is. Where that is one of the easiest things to do. You just have to play the story mode to chapter 4 or something.
Yeah, and my big gripe with that one was nowhere did it say you can unlock in game without paying money. They made it look like a DLC character when Frost was not.
Yeah, and I think that's Warner Brothers.
Yeah,
personally. And I'm sorry, Chris, I stepped on your toes. What was your thought?
Sure. The only thing I was going to say, last thing on microtransactions was the big thing I don't want to come into the console gaming space is what's happened in mobile, where there is definitely a pay to win, which is what you guys were talking about.
Yeah, and that is doing it the wrong way. Everything should be cosmetic or like story based or something like that. Something that does not impact PvP.
So here's a question for you guys. Do you consider loot boxes to be gambling?
I always considered it more akin to trading cards,
Okay.
But at the same time, though, there's a reason why I don't buy trading cards anymore,
Yeah.
I look at my Magic the Gathering days as an addiction, to be honest with you.
But they also
I spend a lot of money on
That's fair.
But that's also one thing, though, that I will point out that is different between here and with trading cards, though, there is still actual tangible physical product in my hand at the end of the day. And so if I got a pack of cards that had nothing I wanted in it, Well, that's why they're called trading cards. I can trade with my friends to get stuff I do want. Like with Overwatch's loot box system, they'll still give you doubles of stuff, but then they might give you a few coins for it. But I've just nowhere ever have I felt, though, it's like, I absolutely did not want this. Why would I want this? But I'm just stuck with it. And that's the part about loot boxes that I don't like. Now, if they would institute a trading system, they'll never do this, but it's just like, I'll give you 5 voice lines for this low-level spray, or something. But that's the big thing, and really, yeah, I guess that's why trading cards is kind of an okay comparison, but not really.
Right.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same boat there. Trading cards, will be worth something. It could be worth something in the future. There, they could go up in value. There's still something tangible that you have that you can pass off to someone else. With loot boxes, you could literally spend money and get nothing that you need or want, and you cannot trade it or give it away to someone else. And they are designed to hit the same feelings as gambling.
It's the same dopamine response.
Like the Overwatch loot boxes. I mean, you see that little meter and then they explode, and it's just kind of like the same, like with the slot machine. You see the meters tick, 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 tick. Oh, we got lights. Oh, good things happen,
I don't remember where I saw this, but I feel like there was a whole science behind not just having loot boxes, but the mechanic of opening them in the animation was itself an addictive response because there was like a build-up in...
Did you watch the documentary, The Social Dilemma?
I haven't.
No. They actually talk about that with
social media,
social
right?
media. Yeah. So there's a reason why you have to pull down for it to refresh on websites or for apps. It's because it's the same kind of motion you would do for a slot machine. You're hoping you get something good with the refresh.
Oh, that's cringy.
Yeah.
That's bad.
Yeah.
Great documentary if you ever get a chance. It's on Netflix, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, Netflix.
All right.
But yeah. So yeah, that is my controversial opinion.
Okay.
That was a good one. That led to a big discussion.
It was good. Not actually. That's. I mean, I for the most part agree with what you actually said. So not super controversial, but
more like gaming's double-edged sword.
Yeah. It's we want things to be affordable where we can play them, sure, but they have to make their money elsewhere.
Sure. Now, if you were given a choice to spend more money up front and get a complete package, I know the answer, I think, for Dave, as opposed to just doing the DLC and microtransaction bit after the fact, what would you prefer?
I like having the... I'm sorry, go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, if you could get all the same content, but you just had to pay for it up in advance, or get the same amount of content, but you get drip credit, right?
I'm usually pretty bad that I will buy the complete editions for games, and I really should stop doing this, especially for fighting games, because now that they're having these seasons of characters. Well, with Mortal Kombat 11, I bought the deluxe edition. It's just an extra $20 on top. And that way I looked at it, that's the season pass. So I'm basically just buying, that. And then I'm like, okay, I'll have everybody. Then we have season 2 and, a complete extra story. And now we've had season 3. And now the internet is full of rumors about season 4. So I have not bought any of season 2, season 3, or any of that, because now they have been good about releasing the next iteration on disc. Now I'm at the point I'm just waiting to because I played all the original story and I had all my fun with it with you guys, at parties. And I'm just rather now to the point I'd rather just wait and buy the complete edition.
But that's where it gets tricky too. So if you're wanting to enjoy the game, like fighting against others online, you then don't get to enjoy those. you may lose the community you can play with by waiting for that complete edition.
Yeah, but then again, I don't community because, as I said, I'm in my 30s and I don't have that much of a time investment anymore.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that's where on a lot of the multiplayer games, I think you're seeing a lot of more of a move to removing things from a paywall and having microtransactions for cosmetics to pay for all this new content that's coming.
Mm-hmm.
Again, to prove your point.
To answer your question, Chris, initially, I would say it depends on the game. If it's a game I know I'm going to be full into, like if they said, hey, here's Pokemon, complete edition, where you will get all the DLC, all the Pokemon, here it all is. I'm going to buy it. If they said there's going to be an Ultimate Edition or Standard Edition of Guilty Gear Strive that's coming out, I might stray towards just the basic version because I don't know if I'm going to love the game or not yet. And then if I love it, I can then pick up the additional pieces. It's basically a matter of weighing out what's the known factor of this game, and is it worth me putting in $60 or $80?
Gotcha. I'll answer my own question. I've always typically been just I'll buy the base game, and then if I really like the game, I'll buy the downloadable content. At that point, It's like, you know what? The developer earned my money.
I gotcha. Yeah. All right, Chris, what was your controversial gaming opinion?
Sure. Let's see. I have two of them.
Okay.
We'll lump in. So when I was thinking about the question, my immediate thoughts were, okay, let's bring in the negative Nancy here just a bit, right? I'm like, what are some of the games that I have played or that some people have really, really liked that I didn't think were all that great? So that's where I took the direction. So we'll start with
I did that too. Yeah.
So we'll start with we'll start with Devil May Cry.
Okay.
And I've been a Devil May Cry fan since the original back on PlayStation 2, and one that a lot of fans of that series is kind of cried out as like the best in the series is Devil May Cry 3.
Mm-hmm.
Which is one that I've never really been able to get into. I still firmly believe that probably my favorite in the series is probably still the first one. I liked, and to even up the ante on the controversy, I actually like Devil May Cry 4 better than I like Devil May Cry 3.
I'd like to. I'll agree to that. Actually, I did feel though that Nero was kind of like the Raiden in that game. You know, it was like the Metal Gear Solid 2 moment. But I didn't like in 3 how you had to pick a style and just kind of be stuck with that for the level. You know, whereas 4 introduced the system where you could just change on the fly with the D-pad, which was much more
fluid.
Yeah, and a lot nicer. And it didn't feel like a punishment if you picked like the wrong one. No, I agree with you. But I will say though, I think 3 may have had my favorite story in the game because it is like technically chronologically the first.
Technically, that game series is so weird.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe isn't the organization for in terms of sequential isn't it 3, 1, 4, 5, 2?
Yeah, 2 is technically, and 2 is the worst one actually.
Yeah.
But that's not a controversial opinion. I think everybody agrees on that.
That's not a game series. I played it a little bit when it first came out. I think I played the first one and maybe part of the second one. That was pretty much it. And it was because I lost interest in like those hack and slash style games. But I will say something that I've that would get me back into it is if they did the Devil May Cry like they did the God of War.
Mm.
Change the
Oh,
combat, completely revamp it with like we're just not. They didn't completely change the combat, but like just shift it a little bit to where it's more of a
well,
third
God
person.
of War became much more strategic. It became more
Right.
of a thinking man's action game. It still had very much combos, very much focused on combos, but you could switch on the fly between different things, and it
It
was
was
more.
less focused on speed too, right?
Yeah, it's it's slower, but not to say slow. It's still a faster action game. Like it's not like slow like Dark Souls is, right?
Oh yeah.
I think for me, like the biggest thing I noticed with that was that evasion was a big thing you had to learn. You had to have your timing right.
Well, and the other thing was it was just managing the room because they changed
Yeah.
the perspective. The original God of like the first 3 God of War games were all kind of like the isometric top-down type view for the most part. And this was over the new God of War, the 2018 was over the shoulder type view. So you really only could see what was in front of you, but there were still enemies over on your right, over on the left, and they did a good job of signaling to you with like the I think it was like red lines, like hey, you're getting attacked from over here, and just kind of managing that and using your companion, Atreus. Oh my God, that was that was probably still one of the best games of actually giving you a companion that you have to protect, but he's actually useful in combat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would say Elizabeth from Bioshock Infinite also fell along those lines, but
Yeah.
Atreus definitely took that and ran with that idea.
Mhm.
It definitely added a nice element to the game because now you had an extra weapon to use if you timed it right with him with his bow and arrow.
Yeah. And I guess to further sink myself among the fan base, I liked Devil May Cry 5. I didn't feel like it was anything really new, so eventually after playing it for a good amount of time, I lost interest in it. And maybe eventually I'll come back to it, but I didn't really feel. And that was the other. I'm sorry. Terrible.
I'm gonna have
they
fun in
did.
editing.
Yeah, 2 so far. Sorry.
They did the thing in video games that I hate that a lot of games do, where you start off with your main character and then you get depowered. And it was like, I've done this before. I've already built him up and learned all of his abilities. Like I don't want to do this again.
Yeah, that's like pretty. I've always felt that was kind of a useless trope, where it's just like, oh, you have all these things, oh, gone. Now you have to build them back up.
Yeah.
Like I don't know.
Well, at least it's better than having a guy tell you when you can't use them, which I guess was my controversial opinion last week. In that I actually like this game, but this is not what I'm talking about this evening. This was actually my backup in case someone else talked about the topic I have for tonight. But I like this, and I still say it is a good game. And for those of you who are listening, I'm holding up my copy of Metroid Other M. And I
didn't hate
liked
it either.
the plot. I liked the plot. It's not perfect at all, but I liked it. But I'm going to shut up about that because that's not what I'm talking about. But Metroid, though, I will admit that was one of the worst ways where you weren't depowered. The commanding officer said, "Don't do that," and that was it.
Yeah.
That was all it was. And I know everybody got really mad about that, and like a part of me was just like, "Yeah, that was kind of dumb." So that was my point with it. But no, I hate when games do that too, and I guess that's why it was nice in 4, though. And that's why they had you do Dante in the second half because
Exactly, because he's already all powerful, like Demon Slayer, right? So
Mhm.
you earned getting to play as him. I liked that.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Yep.
Yep. So that leaves just you, Dave, for your opinion.
Yes, I think so. I'm ready to lose friends and. What's the opposite of gain friends and influence people? Lose friends and get
Alienate.
alienate. Hateful.
Yeah.
However, this is a discussion that me and my brother Doug, who is, ladies and gentlemen, supposed to be on this podcast. Hashtag get Doug on this podcast.
Start
But-
the movement.
Yeah, but actually, me and him have thought for a while now. While we agree this game is revolutionary and we love what it did, however, our argument is Resident Evil 4, very good game, very revolutionary. However, in terms of plot, gameplay, and content, is nowhere near as interesting as Resident Evil 5 and 6. All right?
Okay.
Wow.
I know. And we have our arguments. And I know, even as you can hear, it's like, oh. Okay.
Admittedly, I have not finished 5 or 6, but I've
Okay.
So
enough.
5 might actually be my yeah. I might talk about that next week. Actually,
Okay.
now that I think about it.
So, but our reason being, yes, we understand that Resident Evil 4 revolutionized the gameplay of the Resident Evil series. And, the setting was really good. However, and I know some people, were like, oh, it was really scary. No, it wasn't. I'm sorry. The Resident Evil games, the parts just aren't scary to us anymore. There are some things, yes, that are creepy, but I don't think I've ever been truly terrified of a Resident Evil game, except for maybe parts in 7, which were very atmospheric.
Mm-hmm.
But we're talking in terms of plot here, and I know everybody poops on the plot of 5 and 6. Do you know what the plot of 4 is? I can sum it up with the plot of a classic video game from the 80s. The president's daughter has been kidnapped. Are you a bad enough dude to rescue the president's daughter? That is literally the plot of this game.
Zombie bad dudes.
Yep. Bad dudes. And Resident Evil 4 share the same plot, only instead of the President Ronald Reagan, it is the president's daughter. That is the difference.
Counterpoint, though.
Yes.
You could, and I like the Resident Evil series.
Mhm.
However, you could argue that sometimes some of the plots in those series get too convoluted and complicated for their own good. So it being simple
Mhm.
might actually be a good thing.
But even then, it's, are you a bad enough dude to rescue the president? And I won't say that the other plots are ridiculous, because let's face it, Resident Evil in itself is ridiculous at times. I know some people are like, well, Resident Evil 1 and 2 were so scary. Resident Evil 2 had a giant alligator in the sewers as a boss.
Yeah.
And Resident Evil 1 had sharks in a laboratory and a giant plant monster. Ooh.
And the master of unlocking.
Yeah, so everyone's like, well, it was always scary. No, it wasn't. It's because you were 7 when you played it. That's why it was scary. I didn't really touch Resident Evil until it came to the GameCube when I was well into my teens and had really started getting into horror movies. And so I am enjoying it for what it is. I like that sci-fi, ooh, it's a virus kind of thing. But that's why I argued that 5 and 6... Okay, well, 5, I will say, has the better plot, but I liked it because, we go to Africa, and the reason for that is because you now find out through the plot-wise that, and 4 really doesn't touch upon this whole much, where did the Plagas kind of come from? You know that they were, sealed in the castle, and that kind of starts what they do, but they really double down on it in 5, and what I really liked was that plot-wise, Umbrella and all of these companies are really looking into like the old legends and folk tales of different areas around the world and are going to find the truth behind them. So for Resident Evil 4, it was these gross parasites that lived, in the area that were sealed away back whenever. But with this, in 5, they revealed that the T virus, was based off of another virus that was found in this like ancient backwater African village where they would eat like this hallucinogenic drug as part of like their, like coming of age ceremony. And for some people, it would just flat out kill them, but for other people, it would like imbue them with like enhanced strength, agility. It made them Black Panther, basically. And I thought that was really cool because I was so afraid, with especially how creepy and weird the Plagas looked. I was so worried that they were going to be in like Resident Evil 5. Oh, it's aliens, which is probably. I was still at the same time suffering from how bad Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was. And
I'm just said like, no cursing on this podcast.
And I'm just like, good.
Your turn, Tyler.
If it's aliens, I'm just going to be so mad. And it wasn't, and I was so happy for that. Resident Evil 6, however, I will say the plot is interesting. Is it as good as 4? Probably not, but who else can say that a lot of the problems in this game happened because the main villain didn't get to boink one of the main characters? That is literally what happens. And then I have other reasons why I like 6, though, because they doubled down on. They had this cool system, though, for the gameplay that no one hardly talks about, but it was the C virus in it, which is, when the enemies that are kind of like the enemies from 4 and 5, when they take enough damage, they go into a cocoon state, and then they might hatch as something incredibly weird. But it was always based off of like where they took the damage on their body while you were fighting them to begin with. So like, if you took out their legs, well, they might cocoon and then come out with like a crazy pair of armored like insect style legs and then pursue you. Or if you did like a whole bunch of body damage, well, then they might change completely into something crazy. If you did like a lot of arm damage, well, then they might sprout wings out of where their arms used to be. And I thought that was such a cool gameplay mechanic that no one talks about because everyone was just like, oh, it's not scary. I'm sorry, that is what happens to every horror franchise if they get too many sequels. They keep going bigger, 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 bigger until it gets to the point that it's like, yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. And then they have a come to Jesus moment, and then they kind of return to their roots. 6 was ridiculous. They had their come to Jesus moment with 7. All right, it just happens. But even then, like, I liked the system, the enemies, and the creepiness from 6 more than 4 because, like, 4, while it had some cool stuff, it's also just like, okay, our big main villain, we don't see until Act 4 of the game, and then you've got 3 minor dudes leading up to it, one of which you see throughout the whole game, but then one you only see for Act 1, and then in Act 2 they introduce tiny Spanish Napoleon, and it just gets ridiculous, and so that's why I argue that I think 5 and 6 are more interesting than 4.
So, when you say more interesting, do you mean better?
In aspects, yes, and in other aspects, like, yeah, I would say better. I really do love what 4 did, and I love 4, I do, but I just really don't think 5 and 6 deserve all the hate that they get. I really don't.
I can't speak to 6 because I never played it, but I liked 5. It was good. I have gripes with it. As much as I love that game. I played it a ton, actually. I really did. However, I guess my first big gripe with 5 is that the player AI, you get a much better experience if you play that game with somebody else.
Yeah, I will say
Because-
that I did that with both of them, with 5 and 6. Me and my brother played through both of them, and it was a much better experience because Sheva's the AI for Sheva is kind of an idiot.
It sucked having to. You're like, oh, I'm in my case. I'm trying to heal myself. Oh, I didn't actually combine my herbs. Dead. Oh,
Number
hey,
3.
come save me. Oh,
3.
oh. You're not doing anything. Oh, okay. All right. I guess I have to reload my checkpoint. Whereas if you played it with somebody, like you could actually, tag team the enemies. It was that game is a lot of. I think that from a fun standpoint, I think Resident Evil 5 is more fun than Resident Evil 4. But as like a standalone single player experience, I think 4 is a better game. With the exception, I hated having to flip and put Ashley, I think the president's daughter's name was, in like the box, so she wouldn't die.
Yep.
But yeah, seeing how we already talked about it earlier before, she's an example. That game has the guardian, the like worst case scenario of having a player, like another character that you're supposed to tag along with you. That make the game kind of suck.
Yeah, and she's pretty garbage. Yep. No, and that's one of the other things. It's just, I felt I like a game that has a plot, and really, the plot beats for 4. Just that was more of an afterthought after they revolutionized the gameplay. And 5 and 6, I felt just, there was a lot of fun. There was a lot of crazy cool bosses and monsters. Not that 4 didn't have it, but also I would say with 4, though, that's where we started seeing them, start to get new ideas, but they were still borrowing some old tropes.
Sure.
Like the 2 henchmen that follow around Spanish Napoleon are literally Capcom's version of the xenomorphs from Alien.
Right.
They're pretty similar, bladed tail, everything. Yeah.
So what's crazy? Did you know that as of right now, Resident Evil 5 is actually Capcom's highest selling Resident Evil game?
Really?
Yeah.
Did not know that.
Yep.
Don't know that either.
It's not heralded as the best. Like you said, Resident Evil 4 is typically the one that people go to. And there's a lot of love for Resident Evil 7. I like that game. The first person perspective, it makes it more scary for me. And they definitely double down on the atmosphere. So I'm eventually gonna have to put on my big boy pants and play that game. But
that was the one Resident Evil where I was generally unsettled through probably a majority of the first half to almost 2/3 of the game, because you're not given a lot of ammo like the originals, so you have to avoid them. And then a lot of the enemies, though, and this is what I liked, though, there were much fewer enemies, but that's because they were characters this time. Like the Baker family are pursuing you in the house, and so it's it's almost like a kind of like how a Freddy Krueger game should work. Actually, they pursue you throughout the dream or something, and they're hitting you with one-liners and stuff like that. And then Grandma Baker just appears out of nowhere, just weird places. Wait, what? oh God. Okay, it's just you, Grandma. Sorry. Okay, you wacky kid. You just leave me alone. All right. Well, I haven't heard Phil or Tyler chime in on me yet. Are you just sitting there grinding your molars at me?
No. I was actually thinking more how this is kind of akin to GoldenEye. GoldenEye was a great game when it came out. It revolutionized console multiplayer.
Yeah.
It's not good now.
Yeah.
It's bad. They did a bad job.
It was good for what it was at the time.
Yeah. It aged like American cheese.
and And I can see where Resident Evil 4 kind of falls under the same suit. It revolutionized things. It was phenomenal for its time, but they did iterate on it and improve on things that didn't work great with 5 and 6.
Yeah,
Now-
you had to stand still to shoot, remember? And then other games took it and made it so you could move and shoot. Like
Yep.
4 laid the groundwork for a lot of great horror games. Like Dead Space that series owes its existence to Resident Evil 4. And
Sure.
Resident Evil 4 is still a good game. It still holds up. But, I do hear that they are planning on remaking it. And really, all I think it needs are just some quality of life improvements and some visual updates, and you'd be fine.
Well, and what I was kind of thinking when you were talking about, it being not that great or like the other games being better, it's like it didn't seem like it seemed like your opinion was more that not necessarily that Resident Evil 4 was better than 5 and 6. It was just as bad as those two. Like they weren't necessarily. It wasn't necessarily a better or worse game. It was just like on par with because of the design of it.
Yeah. And again, I am not trying to say, that I dislike Resident Evil 4 at all. I think the biggest point that me and Doug were just trying to figure out, we did not understand the hate that the other two got.
Yeah.
Now, I can understand Chris's gripes, though, with really you should play with 2 people. You should get a buddy. And that's how we played it. That's how we went through it. And that's how we enjoyed it. So, me and him could be, Xbox 360, you plug a LAN cable and system link.
Well,
I miss that so much.
and I think that's the fundamental thing why a lot of people like 4 over 5 and 6 is 4 stayed a single player experience. And when you're playing by yourself where you don't have someone you're communicating with, you get more into the atmosphere of the game. Because 5 and 6 required you, and I'm going to say required because it's virtually unplayable with the AI as it was to play on
It was.
I have beaten that game 3 times. I did it once by myself, the second time with Doug, and then as we were about to play 6, Doug said and fully admitted, I don't remember what happens in 5 at all. And we were just like, well, we've beaten it. I've beaten it twice now, so I have all these upgrades, and you've beaten it once, so you have all these upgrades. Let's just plow through it in like 6 hours because we have all the upgraded equipment and just watch all the cutscenes, which got us even more upgrades and stuff. So
you may be able
to death.
So you may actually be able to speak to this then. Do you feel like you got more, not invested, but do you feel like you were more involved with the atmosphere, more affected by it when you were playing by yourself or when you were playing co-op?
What we did, though, is we did adjust the difficulty, though, for there being 2 of us. So there were definitely times, though, where, I think everybody probably remembers the liquor attack in that game, where it is literally a swarm of those jerks. Just playing that single player on medium difficulty level, yeah, that was a challenge. Playing it on hard with 2 people, and really, Sheva specializes as a sniper. So she's good at picking them off when they're at a distance, but the thing about the lickers is they can close that gap pretty quickly. So that also led to some stress. So, I have to be next to my brother with like the shotty, just, blam, getting the ones that get close while he's, like trying to pick off ones that are farther away. And we had to probably do that like 3 times.
So I'm thinking more of the like, whenever you're not fighting enemies, so you're more like exploring, doing the puzzle-based stuff. Do you feel like you get that more sense of not horror, but like that dread feeling when you're playing by yourself versus when you're doing multiplayer?
I could see that, but then again, it's different for me and my brother because, yeah, we do have our differences, but at the end of the day, we are pretty similar in how we like to play video games. So there are sometimes, though, and probably having another person makes it less scary. That's why people go see horror movies on like dates and stuff like that, you know.
Right.
But so I will say that. So, you know, maybe if I had to replay it again, but there were still definitely times where we were just both like, "Oh, that is awful," especially in 6, because there's like, you know, a part where you're literally in like a Siberian like looking area, and you know there's all of this gross and dead and blood, and then like a giant creature pulls out in the middle of the village, and then like all the villagers start scattering, and you've got to take this thing down while you're avoiding gore and viscera, and it's just like, oh wow. So yes and no. um I think though the game that perfected that though in places though, and I am sad to say though that unfortunately it's probably not going to get a fourth game due to EA, but Dead Space 3 actually, its multiplayer was planned to be so much more than it was, but even then at the time it was something pretty crazy because, you know, the main character in the plot, you know, was no longer affected by the hallucinations anymore. By the third game, you know, he is cured of that. The person playing with you, however, is not. And so there would be times where, like, you know, it's specifically a co-op section, you know, like I'm playing, I think I was playing as Isaac, and then Doug just like, you know, so I'm like facing this direction, and my brother is in an armchair facing the other direction. And he just goes, "Are you hearing these creepy children laughing and seeing all these Christmas presents? Because this is messed up." And I'm like, "What are you Oh, and you're that character Carter is hallucinating, like I believe the fact that he like lost his son, and so now he is seeing like Christmas times and happier things, and then blah, it's a necromorph. And so we had a lot of fun with that, and apparently they were going to take it way further, like the whole game, and then like so Carver might actually see stuff, and then there might be times though where like Isaac appears as one of them, and so he starts blasting you, and I'm like, why didn't you do that? That would have made it excellent. So if like maybe if they had like something like that where like, you know, one of the co-op characters is infected with something and suddenly starts seeing a bunch of weird stuff or things like that, or you know, maybe they're started infected with the zombie virus, and then you get like the thing in old cartoons where they're like stranded on a boat in the ocean, and suddenly the other one looks like a food item or something, you know, just something like that. So, there are ways you could do it better, certainly, but
so to answer your question, Tyler, I feel like a game could do a better job from creating atmosphere and really making you feel that atmosphere in a horror in the horror series genre when it's single player. It's much easier to break that wall when there's another player playing with you, and that's why it's hard. It's almost like comparing apples and oranges when you talk about RE4 versus RE5 and RE6, because RE5 and RE6 are almost, they're action games, right? With like a horror as a side, whereas RE4 is a good blend of both. And arguably, you could argue that actually the games that came before RE4 are more of your traditional horror games than even RE4 was.
And I would say RE4 though is an action game as well, because there eventually gets to a point where you're so overpowered that, you know, you're
true. The first run through is certainly going to be much more of a atmospheric horror game, and then your second run through you've unlocked a bunch of stuff and you just lay waste.
I would say though by the end of that game though you are a walking, you know, military surplus, because I remember at the end of that game you get a shotgun that can hold 100 rounds in a drum barrel. And I'm just like, nothing is going to stop you with that.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep. So that is my controversial opinion. I have several others, but I figured that would be the most inflammatory this evening.
Fair enough. Does anyone want to do like a rapid fire of some of their other controversial opinions?
Sure.
The Last of Us 2 sucked. I'm just gonna say it.
I have not played it yet.
Neither have I.
But-
Neither have I.
So
No spoilers.
I liked The Last of Us Part 2. I hated it at some parts, but I ultimately ended up enjoying it. I appreciate what it did. I don't think you
Yeah.
can argue that it's definitely a technical masterpiece. It's one of the most beautiful games I've ever played.
Yeah.
My biggest gripe with it is pacing. I'm not going to talk about the story spoilers.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I would agree.
Thank you.
I
Present
would,
company.
no spoilers, but like I would agree that the design for it was really good. I think it was the one that I think that was the one that beat Doom and Ghost for sound. But I mean I know it was a well-made game.
Let's be honest, right? If you watch the Game Awards for 2020, it was the Last of Us show, right? The Last of Us won almost every award.
I didn't watch it because I knew that's what it was going to be, and I was disappointed. But that's neither here nor there. I will say it looked and sounded fantastic, though. My opinion aside,
It is a beautiful game.
the pacing was what kind of got me.
The other thing I will say is, if you like the combat of the original The Last of Us Part 2 does its combat even better.
Okay, good.
It plays much better than the original. And I know because I actually played the original before, because it's been like 8 years or 7 years or however long since I'd played it. So I wanted to get it fresh. And the original Last of Us definitely still holds up, by the way. But The Last of Us 2 has better gameplay.
It had a lot smoother combat, but I had my own gripes with it. And again, this isn't a spoiler, but just the stealth combat was kind of frustrating for me because if even one person knew where you were at, they would all beeline towards you.
See, I liked that though.
That would be more realistic.
The masochist in me loved it.
There would be moments where I was like, okay, I can understand this one person seeing where I was at. His buddies on the other end of whatever town, however, somehow knew exactly where I was at in these bushes and just came straight for me. And I was just like, really? Like, I didn't know everything. There's no way. But just little stuff like that really just kind of ruined it for me. And I was just kind of like, it was put together really well. I appreciate what they were doing, but I think it could have been executed a little better, at least as far as story and pacing goes.
So if our fan base ever wants it, I actually and not to talk or spoil anything certainly during this chat, but I actually have 2 ideas I think that would actually make the game better from a pacing standpoint, but I'm not going to say them here because that would spoil too much.
That's fair.
But ultimately, I did like that game.
Here's my rapid fire. I feel like the DualShock 4 is a garbage dumpster on fire of a controller. It's
My only
uncomfortable.
concern. Oh, sorry. Go
ahead.
I'm just saying, there's no way it's going to stay white like that for long. With
No. gamers
and the food
no.
and the greasy fingers.
No.
I'm saying the DualShock 4.
He didn't say DualShock.
Okay.
So,
Sorry.
I've been a PlayStation gamer since they originally came out. I am used to that form factor, and
it's not ergonomic. Battery life is terrible.
Sure, I'll give you the battery life. I've gotten around it simply by the fact that now I actually have a charging dock, so
I just leave it plugged in, man.
It's always charged when I use it because I'm throwing it on the charging dock after every use. So my argument for you, Tyler, is go try to play a DualShock 3 or DualShock 2 even. And you can see the general improvements that have happened over time. The DualShock 4 and I haven't played the DualSense, but the DualShock 4 is definitely better than the ones that came before it.
Oh, I won't disagree with that.
I will say
they're all terrible.
I will say though that I could not play shooters hardly at all on PlayStation 2 and 3 because those weren't triggers. So the fact that the DualShock 4 has triggers for L2 and R2 was instantly a world of improvement for me. So I'm like, well, that's all I want. So I'm good.
Mhm.
But they are positioned way too high. They're still not comfortable for those triggers, I feel.
I would agree with that. They are positioned kind of high. I don't have as many issues with it, but I will say it does take a particular. It's a different grip. I can see why it would be frustrating for people.
Yeah, and I will say the early ones that I for launch, and it's the last console at launch I'm ever going to buy. But you know, eventually that R2 trigger, because it's used so often, it's starting to stick. Like I think that has now been remedied. But again, it's one of those situations like, guys, an extra 5 cents for each of these controllers, it might have saved you a lot of money in the long time, but it probably would have saved you, a heck of a lot more headaches than down the line. Because I don't use that controller now because, Spider-Man gets stuck swinging whichever direction he's going and doesn't stop.
So did you buy a new controller?
Yes.
Then Sony won.
Yeah.
So I have somehow been lucky in that regard. My only controller issues I've ever had have been with my Joy-Cons, because Nintendo, please fix it. And then my Xbox One controller, my original one that I had, was a piece of crap.
Really?
Yeah, the Joy-Con drift was real, or not Joy-Con drift, but the stick drift.
I had that with an Elite controller. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just learned how to replace the analog stick myself.
Actually, it's funny you mentioned the Joy-Con, or not Joy-Con. Gosh, we're all saying Joy-Con. DualShock 4 controller having problems, Tyler, because actually it's funny. My dad was never really much of a console gamer, but this past year he'd gotten a PS4, and before the year was up, his PS4 controller was drifting, like what Chris was saying with the analog. The sticks just weren't centered very well.
So
he was having a lot of problems with it pretty quickly.
And I've done my homework on it. Apparently, can happen with any analog stick controller that's out there. Certainly, and that's actually part of the reason why I went and bought. I have an Elite controller for my Xbox. That thing's awesome. I love it. It's the way that they've designed the analog sticks, and it's the cheap plastic that they put in them, and eventually it wears out, and so that's where it either sticks or the game thinks it's moving, but it's actually not moving. It's a problem, and I imagine that's probably the issue with the Joy-Cons. The thing that sucks and is really surprising, and shame on you, Nintendo, is apparently it's even an issue with Switch Lite, which I get for the Joy-Cons because they can swap out, but with the Switch Lite, those are attached, right? You have a handheld. Unless you replace the whole thing or send the whole thing into service with Nintendo, you're stuck with that problem.
Yeah.
And you can't dock the Switch Lite either. So
yeah, that's frustrating.
Yeah, luckily, knock on all the wood here, I only ever had one controller get like the drifting problem. That was back in the GameCube days. Yeah, but again, knock on all the wood here. But that has been luckily, and I've dropped controllers from like considerable height before. No, but no, it is a pain in the butt. Like suddenly Mario in Super Mario Sunshine would not stop running forward. So
Oh, I noticed it terribly with my Xbox when I was playing Destiny, because I'd be moving forward, and all of a sudden my gun would start drifting up.
Yep. Yeah, it's really bad.
Yeah. I thought I had one of the module pieces, but evidently I don't have any spare ones. I was going to show you guys what the actual plasticky module piece looks like.
Gotcha. So, my rapid fire controversial opinion goes back to again the Xbox 360 and PS3 era. I still think that Elder Scrolls Skyrim is an overrated game. Was it revolutionary for the time? Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think it's as good as everyone remembers it to be.
That nostalgia factor.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that I think what hasn't helped them though is they beat that horse to death, brought it back as a zombie, and then beat that to death. I mean, they just they keep re-releasing it, and it's just like, what is the point now? You know, aside from money, that I know that's the only point, but even then, it's just kind of like it's got to get now to the point where your cost to produce this on a new disc for a new system has to outweigh the money you are going to get back from this. I have only debated rebuying it once, and that is because the Switch version has Legend of Zelda costumes, and I'm that much of a fanboy.
I don't know if this has much merit, but I feel like it has, at least part of it has to do with the modding community. I know Reddit has a ton of stuff from people where they're just posting stuff where they've modded Skyrim over and over and over again. And because it's an old game, so many people are used to the code by now. They can just, it's an open world, popular game. They can do whatever they want to it.
True.
All right. Okay. I think I have. I'm not going to talk about Other M tonight. I promise. Just that one bit, because I know then people will actively try and come to my house and harm me. Now, as I have admitted, I used to be a rabid Nintendo fanboy. Still am. I used to be, but more so. But back in the day, I had the power to defy logic. You know, like PlayStation, more like Lame Station. Yeah, I got over that after high school. I have found so far, I guess my controversial opinion is that Nintendo has made only one game that I have truly, actively hated and despised. I can find merit in parts of all the others, just a little bit. But this one frickin' game is on my list of most hated games. Like, I actively have seething hate for that game. I still own this game. As a reminder, you know, why we don't pay full money for stuff sometimes. But the worst game I think Nintendo has ever created was Odama, the GameCube game, which was a Japanese feudal military
Pinball game, right?
RTS and pinball game
Yeah.
that used the GameCube microphone to command your soldiers. So you play as a bunch of sumo wrestlers that pull the flippers at the bottom. The Odama is a giant metal sphere that goes careening through the battlefield. However, you can easily destroy your own soldiers with said Odama. And the goal is for these sumo wrestlers to get a funeral bell all the way up to the enemy base, which is the top nonsense of the pinball machine. However, you have to attack and get your soldiers up to the base. You only have a limited amount of them, and again, there is a giant pinball going back and forth, killing your own men, and the only way to control these soldiers is your GameCube microphone. Go left. That's not left. Left.
Yeah.
Left. Left! And it just doesn't work. I beat the first level, could not get past the second level, went back to the first level to practice some more, then thought, okay, I'll move on to the next level. No. I had to beat the first level all over again. Because even though it's on a map screen, on like the menu, like, you know, you see yourself go over to the next part. Nope, wouldn't let me go over. I was then stuck on the first level again, which I could not beat again. And at that point, no, this game sucks. This is the worst Nintendo game ever. Whose stupid idea was it? And come to find out, it was made by the creator of Seaman, the Dreamcast game with the fish that has the human face that you talk to like a virtual pet.
So you know it's got
Makes
class.
sense. Yeah. So there. That's my controversial opinion. No, not Metroid Other M. Not the worst game that Nintendo ever. No, Odama. That game is a solid Odama-sized turd. All right.
Is that controversial though? I mean, I've never even heard of this game.
Fair.
It's controversial because of how much he hates it.
Yes.
I guess.
That, and also it's just like, as I have said, every other Nintendo game I'm fine with. Even, I will admit some have flaws, but none of them. For how much hate that they get, like Metroid Other M, for how much hate it gets. For Chibi Robo Zip Blast, for how much hate that gets. It's still not Odama, all right? Because that game is garbage. All right?
You see, you didn't even
Nothing
list
is
my
in
favorite.
comparison.
You
What?
didn't even list my least favorite Nintendo game when you were giving examples.
Yeah.
Yoshi's Story.
Still a better game than this. Still better. Mhm. I actually enjoy that game. I'll admit it's easy, but I do enjoy it.
Yeah.
It just coming off of Yoshi's Island, it was the biggest disappointment on the planet. That is the game where I learned read reviews before you buy a game.
What? You don't like eating 30 fruit in the level and winning?
The levels don't even have ends. You just eat 30 fruits and you end it.
I know. It was definitely, I think, meant to be more of like a kid's game without actually, explicitly saying, hey, this is probably better for kids under the age of 7.
It had no real consequences. It made me miss Baby Mario. Do you know how bad it has to be if it makes you miss Baby Mario?
I'll tell you what, the soldiers in Odama are like, Baby Mario times 1,000. It's just, they don't listen to you. Again, you're screaming into a microphone on the GameCube that has as much voice recognition as Hey You Pikachu. And even then, I like that game more than Odama.
So, how did you come into possession of this game, Dave? Like did someone talk it up for you, or you were just like, it's made by Nintendo, it's got to be golden?
That one. It was when in the middle of high school when I was at the peak of my Nintendo fanboy phase. Again, I had the power to defy logic. I would happily get into an argument over which console was better. And and now, very quickly after that, I started seeing all these cool games come out for the other consoles, and now I'm grown up enough to be like, well, it's okay to have a favorite, but it's okay to play all this other cool stuff too. So Nintendo is still my favorite, near and dear to my heart, but I'm not opposed to saying they can't make mistakes like I could back then. That was the lesson too, though. I guess that was what was controversial. I could accept any flaw until that game came along, and it was just like, oh god.
Thought it was a hidden gem, just turned out to be a polished turd.
Yeah, and even then, we would watch X Play on TV, and they're reviewing it on it, like, this is rather interesting, and I'm seeing it, I'm like, oh, it's a pinball game made by Nintendo. No, it's pinball and something else that's really weird.
It's funny.
Yep. I hate that freaking game. I hate that freaking game so much.
It sounds like instead of getting peanut butter and jelly with two genres mixed up, it was a peanut butter, mayonnaise, and just sadness sandwich.
Throw a turd in there too, and you have Odama.
Peanut butter, mayonnaise, and tears. Dave's tears.
There is only 2 games on the list that I actively despise. Number 1 is Odama, and number 2 is Space Channel 5.
Oh gosh.
And Space Channel 5 actually might be better, but at the time, I struggle to read music and keep rhythm sometimes, and there's no visual meter for me to kind of keep track with that in the original Space Channel 5. So I bought that game for the Dreamcast for $1 at the dollar store, just to put in perspective where I got that from. And it was certainly worth $1.
Okay.
And I know some people love that game. Like, it's, their favorite music rhythm game. but I can't keep count sometimes to save my life, and I will fully admit that. Even though I sing and I do theater stuff and things like that, I'm good at doing stuff by ear and having like a visual with me, but there is none.
Fair.
But at least there's one thing that Space Channel 5 has that it's better. That's better than Odama. It's not Odama.
And with that, I think that wraps up this week's episode. Do you have any last words of wisdom, guys?
Don't play Odama.
Don't play Odama.
Don't play Odama. And now people are going to start looking at it. Oh, is it really as bad as Dave said?
I know I'm going to.
They were originally going to have that game be played with the DK Bongo controller. Blam, this one for your left bumper, this one for your right. I think if they had not incorporated the stupid microphone, you probably would have had a better time. Because then it would have been like, bum, 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 bum. That would have been fun, But I digress.
Well, putting an RTS on console is really not the greatest idea.
Mm-hmm.
Just from jump. Those types of games really do belong on PC with the mouse. But.
Yeah. Yep. I will agree.
Well, thank you, listeners. We appreciate you listening. Subscribe, comment, tell us what you love, tell us what you hate, tell us why Dave was wrong about Resident Evil 4.
And Metroid Prime, Other M, and Odama. Okay, I can't be wrong about Odama. I'm sorry. If you actively like that game, you need to check yourself into your nearest mental institution because there is tangibly something wrong with you. I hate that game so much. That's like my Dr. and Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. You know how Angry Video Game Nerd has Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde as his worst game? Odama is mine. Yep.
Fair enough. Well, everyone, stay safe, be kind, bottoms up.